गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिभर धारी गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिभर धारी यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन यमुना तीर वनचारी यमुना तीर वनचारी जय जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी राधा Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Krishna विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शतकोत्तर श्रीमद् भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्री प्रभुपाद की जय। विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शतकोत्तर श्रीमद् भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती ठाकुर श्री प्रभुपाद की आनंद कोटि वैष्णव की नामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवास आदि गौर भक्तवृंद की श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्यामकुंड राधखंड गिरि गोवर्धन की वृंदावन धाम की मथुरा धाम की गंगा माई की यमुना माई की तुलसी देवी की भक्ति देवी की Transcendental book distribution ki, Samaved Bhaktivinoda ki, all glories to the Assembled Devotees, Hare Krishna, 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 all glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, Father Krishna Prasthapatuli Shrimati Bhakti Vikasa Swami. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, reading from Srimad Bhagavatam 9:11:6. Aprattam nas tvaya king nu bhagavan Bhuvaneshwara yan no antar hridayam vishya tamo hangsi sarochisha aparamata Apratam nastvaya kimnu Bhagavan Bhuvaneshwara Yanantar Hridayam Vishya Tamohang Sisarochisha Apratam nastvaya kimnu Bhagavan Bhuvaneshwara Yanantar Hridayam Vishya Tamohang Sisarochisha Apratam nastvaya kimnu Bhagavan Bhuvaneshwara Yanantar Hridayam Vishya Tamohang Sisarochisha
Apratam nastvaya kimnu Bhagavan Bhuvaneshwara Antar Hridayam Vishya Moham Siswarochisha Apratam nastvaya kimnu Bhagavan Bhuvaneshwara Antar Hridayam Vishya Moham Siswarochisha Apratam nastvaya kimnu Bhagavan Bhuvaneshwara Antar Hridayam Vishya Moham Siswarochisha Apratam nastvaya kimnu Bhagavan Bhuvaneshwara Antar Hridayam Vishya Moham Siswarochisha
Mataji's Apramitastaya kimnu Bhuvaneshwara Yanantar Hridayam Vishya Siswarochisha Apramitastaya kimnu Bhuvaneshwara Vishya Okay. Sorry. Okay. Apratam, not given. Naha, unto us. Toya, by your lordship. Kim, what? Nu, indeed. Bhagavan, O Supreme Lord. Bhuvaneshwara, O Master of the whole universe. Yet, because Naha, our, Antahridayam, within the core of the heart, Vishya, entering, Tamaha, the darkness of ignorance, Hangsi, you annihilate, Swarochisha, by your own effulgence. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. O Lord, you are the master of the entire universe. What have you not given us? You have entered the core of our hearts and dissipated the darkness of our ignorance by your effulgence. This is the supreme gift. We do not need a material donation. Purport. When Dhruva Maharaj was offered a benediction by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he replied, "My Lord, I am fully satisfied. I do not need any material benediction." Similarly, when Prahlad Maharaj was offered a benediction by Lord Nrsimhadev, he also refused to accept it and instead declared that a devotee should not be like a vanik, a mercantile man who gives something in exchange for some profit. One who becomes a devotee for some material profit is not a pure devotee. Brahmanas are always enlightened by the Supreme Personality of Godhead within the heart. Sarvasya chaham hridishani vishto matasmriti jnanam apohanam cha. And because the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas are always directed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they are not greedy for material wealth. What is absolutely necessary they possess, but they do not want any expanded kingdom. An example of this was given by Vamanadev, acting as a brahmachari. Lord Vamanadev wanted only 3 paces of land. Aspiring to possess more and more for personal sense gratification is simply ignorance, and this ignorance is conspicuous by its absence from the heart of a Brahmana or Vaishnava. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshulunimitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Shri Chaitanya Manavishtam Sthapitamena Budali Swayam Prabhakadamaya Dadati Sapadandikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Tapatakalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrachatam Sagana Raghunathan Vitam Tasajivam Sadhuitam Sapatam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Saganarita Shri Shakhan Vitam Shah He Krishna Karunadin Sindhu Dinavanda Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavani Suri Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haribhya Vanchakalpatarvescha Kripa Sindhubhya Vichapatita Nam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prashthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vikasa Swami Nitanavane Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prashthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitanavane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharni Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshataranya Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivas Adi Gaura Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Rama Ramiti Rame Rame Manorame Sahasranama Tatulyam Rama Nama Viranane Jnananandamayam Devam Nirmam Spatikakritam Adaram Sarva Vidyanam Hayagrivam Pasmahe Guru Vaishnava Bhagavan Tinera Smarana Hoy Vigna Vinashan Anayashe Hoy Nijavanchita Purana. So today, obviously, Ramachandra Prabhu has given a very nice class this morning on Lord Ram's appearance day, and we continue that now this morning, understanding so many nice different aspects of the pastimes of the Lord, specifically to with Dharma and how he carries out Dharma, and how the Ramayana teaches us practically. He was speaking the 3 that the Bhagavad Gita specifically teaches by instruction. The Ramayana teaches specifically by showing. What is this word you use exactly? Ramayana it does by showing. Suggestively and indirectly. And then what's the last one that you referred to? Bhagavatam does all 3. Bhagavatam does all 3. And actually Chaitanya Charitamrita also does all 3. Yeah, and it boils it down even more. So we can see here throughout the Bhagavatam the pastimes of Lord Ram is also present and how nice they are. How nice the pastimes of Lord Ram are, that they attract all the living entities. Just like here we hear the Brahmanas. Although they may be granted a benediction, as it is mentioned in the previous verse, all the Brahmanas who are engaged in the various activities of sacrifices were very pleased with Lord Ramachandra, who is greatly affectionate and favorable to the Brahmanas. So, although they could have been offered so many things in return, as for sacrifice, when you do a sacrifice, you get a reward. But the Brahmanas, they do not perform the sacrifice for the purpose of a reward, as being mentioned here. You are the master of the entire universe. What have you not given us? You have entered the core of our hearts and dissipated the darkness of our ignorance by your effulgence. So the Lord enters into the core of the heart of the devotees. Specifically how? How does he enter? He enters in Krishna Leela, also into the hearts of his dear devotees. He plays his beautiful flute when the gopis are so far away. They're in their homes. They're stuck. But that flute enters, it's mentioned in the Bhagavatam, it enters through their ears, into their hearts, and invokes that deep desire to associate with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna steals their hearts by entering through their ears. It's mentioned like that. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he enters into the devotees' hearts, to those hearts of those devotees who are pure, those who are hearing properly. So this is by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Dushtaman. Kirtana prabhave smarana swabhave sakale bhajane nirjana sambhava. The transcendental power of congregational chanting automatically awakens remembrance of the Lord and his divine pastime in relation to one's own eternal spiritual form. Only at that time does it become possible to go off to a solitary place and engage in confidential worship of their lordships. So, one who hears the congregational chanting of the holy name, the Brahmanas, that is their specific engagement. We were talking about sacrifices and how In different ages, there's different sacrifices. But the Brahmanas or the Vaishnavas, they never are tired of hearing of the pastimes of the Lord. This kirtana, this kirtan prabhava, always hearing and chanting, this never stops. The sacrifice, according to the age, may be slightly different. Maybe did you worship such and such? But the hearing, that's why Lord Ram, to this day, is so famous, is so well known throughout India. Because the pastimes of the Lord are never stopped. They go on forever. It is never destroyed. Although Krishna says that your yoga nashta, slowly degrades over time, but the sadhus, those pure-hearted devotees, they continue that line in some small way. It may not be when yoga nashta it becomes degraded. Means that it can also mean that it is kept alive by very few. It may not be fully present in society like it is right now in the Sankirtan movement. So it may be present in some few Vaishnavas who are keeping the line pure to spread that message again. So here we see the Brahmanas are enlightened by hearing about the pastimes of the Lord, hearing about the pastimes of Lord Ram, specifically as we're discussing here. Of course, Krishna is the fountainhead. Of course, Krishna to Bhagavan Swayam. From Krishna, Ram is coming. So therefore, the pastimes of the Lord, he is the all-attractive personality of Godhead, so all his pastimes are very attractive. And this story of Lord Ram, as we see here in the Ramayana, the story of Lord Ram, it invokes great feelings within the hearer of the Ramayana. And so does Shakespeare's work. Invokes great feeling in the hearers of that work. So does when you watch a movie and you watch whatever, I don't know what the latest movie is and what people watch nowadays. And I don't even remember a romantic movie that I watched, whatever. But it invokes that feeling within people that, oh, I want that love. Like, what is this, Romeo and Juliet? Romeo and Juliet, it's another sad story. It's all of infatuation and love. But we can see, you go ask anyone who can relish that over and over and over again. Who can hear that over and over again and can feel satisfied? No one. That's why they have to keep changing. That's why new poems are written, new stories are written. And people practically, like you ask the new children, new students, and all of this, Romeo and Juliet, unless you're studying English specifically, you won't know what that is. You don't even know the Beatles, you definitely won't know Shakespeare's work. So over time, it becomes disgusting, I guess you could say. It's not satisfying to the heart. And it doesn't purify the heart. Or just like so many people watch so many different movies. And Star Wars, another famous one, another epic, you could say, like it's famous over so many years actually. It was one of those things that is so famous, but it has to be reinvented every 10, 20 years. It has to be reinvented in order to capture the feelings of others. Otherwise it's boring. Oh, they use boring technology. It's like 1960s Star Wars. It's like, it's not that interesting. It's just like, any average teenager can make that now with their phone or whatever, using AI and all that. So it doesn't actually satisfy their hearts. As we read about how the Brahmanas, they don't want anything more. When they hear of the pastimes of the Lord, they're saying, actually, don't give us anything else. You don't have to offer us anything. But that is not the case with those who hear Star Wars or great poets like Shakespeare. What do we cultivate when we hear such things? Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Mada, Matsarya. All of these things become more prominent in our heart. Not that they go away. They become more and more prominent. The more we engage in those mundane things, mundane sound vibration, the more one gets attached and entangled. And the more one feels dissatisfaction of heart. As Prabhupada says in the Srimad Bhagavatam many times, that when one reaches old age, he feels, what is this word that he uses specifically? I forget disillusioned at his life. He looks back, what did I do? What a waste of time. So one feels disillusioned when one goes on just like these movies. I don't know, I guess people's lives are so boring. It's like you keep watching them again. It's the same thing over and over again. I keep telling all the time, I used to watch like 3 movies a night somehow and go to school and do all of that. I don't know what else I was doing, but I passed. But I remember over time, like every time you wanted to like sit down and watch, it would take me at least an hour to find the movie that I wanted to watch. Yeah. Because it's like at a certain point, it's like you've watched all of the good ones, and then like you're starting to pick out like, okay, like what's like the second grade, and then after you finish the second grade, what's the third grade, and then you start to get low, and it's like, hey, it's like, all right, at least it's like something you haven't seen before. But it's the same thing. Again and again and again. It gets boring, gets stale. And you don't want to watch the same movie you watched, like, like you sit down, you're like, man, it's like, you look through all these movies and you're like, you've watched most of them and you never want to watch the same one again because you already know what happens. So it's not satisfying to the heart. It doesn't help us become detached. It pushes us to become more attached, hanker more, lament more. And we watch the movie and then we lament about our lives. About how my life I don't have a lover like that in my life. How can I not have that romantic feeling? Why can I not play that song in my car and blast the radio and drive down the highway on the side of a mountain, with my rooftop down? So why can't I have that? It invokes this lust within one's heart. It fuels a fire of lust. But when one hears this pastimes of Lord Ram, of Lord Krishna, Shinu Sukadam Bhavasaram, it gives one great ecstasy within the heart. It helps one overcome the material world. It helps one overcome birth, death, old age, and disease. Why? Because it's Krishna Rasayana. It's very tasteful. The pastimes of Krishna, the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are very, very tasteful. When you hear it, you want to hear it again and again, just like we sing this song, Jai Radha Madhava. And you meditate upon that, and you, like every day we sing it, like every day, like especially like sometimes when you sit up here and you're chanting it, you're like, oh wow, this is so relishable. Every day, every single time, if you're conscious and you're like, what am I singing? And you actually like think about it, it's like, wow, this is like very relishable. Krishna, the son of Yashoda, the lover of the gopis. How amazing is this? And one can meditate upon that and one can get fresh new realizations each time he chants it, when he has proper concentration and meditation upon that. But if you were to meditate upon the movie or the song that you're listening to, it invokes more desire, it evokes more confusion. It's like, I tell this to other guys all the time. When I was, 17, 16, you listen to a song, it's really, really sad song, it's got nothing to do with your life, but you feel sad, and you're like, oh, like you just went through a breakup. It's like, I never had a girlfriend. It's like, what happened? What happened? It's like, I don't know. I feel depressed because I'm listening to this, and you want to feel that. So you feel like, okay, like, man, that's like, like I want to feel, for some reason, you want to go through a breakup. It's like, why? So it doesn't help us. It invokes more pain within the heart. No satisfaction. So just like, it's a nightmare actually to go through all this again and again and again and again. It's a nightmare. It's like it's just like at night sometimes when you're like, 15 or whatever, you go to school and you have a nightmare that you're back in primary school again. You're halfway through your high school, you're almost finished, and then you have a nightmare, you're back in school again. It's like the material world is like that. It's the same thing again and again, just going back and forward, back and forward, back and forward. And this material world exists for us purely because of the desire to enjoy separately. Purely for that reason. Actually, if one stops that desire to enjoy separately from Krishna, to feel that feeling that is separate from Krishna, I want to feel a breakup with some girl. And I want to feel that separation within my heart. I want to know what that feels like. Some material desire. One cannot overcome birth, death, old age, and disease. He becomes stuck. But if that desire is redirected to its true desire. I want to feel that separation for Krishna. What happens? What happens? Srimad Bhagavatam. Bhakti parishanu bhava viraktir. Anyatra, you can finish this, I'm going to butcher it. Jaisha trika ek kalaha, and then prapadyamanasya yatashanatah suyas tushtihi pushtihi kush. How do you say this? Shud apayo nusghasam. Devotion, direct experience of the Supreme Lord, and detachment from other things. These three occur simultaneously for one who has taken shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in the same way that pleasure, nourishment, and relief from hunger comes simultaneously and increasingly with each bite for a person engaged in eating. So one becomes satisfied, tushti. He has experience of the Supreme Lord, parishanu bhava, and then pushti, nourishment, he gets nourished. Virakti, detachment, shud apaya, cessation of hunger. So these are the symptoms that take place in one who hears about the pastimes of the Lord. He becomes naturally attracted. He becomes no longer attracted for the desire to enjoy in this material world, whether it's in sadness or in happiness. They are two sides of the same coin. So he no longer becomes desirous to have any of those things. So what is awakened within his heart? The taste for the Supreme Lord. As Prabhupada said, I was giving a class a few days ago. One can taste Krishna. If one can taste Krishna, then he'll get higher attachment. He starts to experience the Supreme Lord. He starts to taste the holy name. When he starts to hear this Shravan, when he starts to hear from the proper spiritual master, he starts to gain taste of the holy name. And these material desires, this kama, this lobha, this greed and lust, they start to become less and less. The fire of material existence, which burns, this lust, and the spiritual master comes like he showers us. He's like the cloud, as we sing every morning. So the devotees of the Lord, they're very attracted to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And is it blissful? Of course. Hearing of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is of course blissful. Otherwise, how would the devotees of the Lord be able to let go of everything? Of course, it's a higher attachment. It's blissful, but it's not the same bliss we think of in this material world. When you think about happiness in this material world, you think, oh, I'm going to be happy, and there's like just smiling and dancing and everything is great and wonderful. But the Ramayana is almost like contradictory to that. It's not all bliss, like seemingly. It's all, as Prabhu was saying this morning, it's all sad. It's all very sad. The whole story is at the beginning, the middle, the end. It's very sad. It invokes great feelings, just like I was saying, the songs that we listen to and the movies we watch, they invoke great feeling within the heart. Similarly, the pastimes of Lord Ram, they invoke great feeling within the heart of the devotee. And when one hears properly, that feeling becomes manifest in one's life, and that becomes attractive to him. But specifically in Lord Ram's pastimes, those feelings are of sadness. How can this be? Lord Rama, what does Rama mean? Reservoir of pleasure. He's the one who is the reservoir of pleasure. He gives all pleasure. But to the devotees, the Ram Bhaktas, it's almost like when you listen, when you hear the pastimes of Lord Ram, it's like your heart is being torn into pieces. Every chapter is like, it's like Prabhu was saying, it's like, it is one of the first books in my life where I actually cried reading it. Because this is ridiculous. And I'm like some neophyte that has no experience in devotional service. And reading it, it's like, whoa, this is intense. Sometimes when you hear about other people's sorrows and difficulties, you can feel bad for them and like, oh my God, they're going through a lot. So when you hear about the pastimes of Lord Ram and you see Dasharatha, you see all the residents of Ayodhya, You see all of the devotees who are sacrificing for Lord Ram, and you feel, oh my God, these devotees are dedicated. These devotees are fully surrendered. And it evokes great feeling within the heart. I wish I could be like that. I wish I could be that dedicated. I wish I had that feeling. And in that state we can cry. Oh, how wonderful that is. And although seemingly it is very sad, it is the rasa. The Supreme Personality of Godhead he likes to taste many rasas. Variety is the mother of all enjoyment. He's the enjoyer of everything. So even this sadness that is there in Ram Leela, it is very enjoyable for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He enjoys that. It's not that we have this material conception just because we're sad, it means life sucks. But actually the residents of Ayodhya and the devotees of Lord Ram, when they're experiencing this great pain of separation from Lord Ram when he leaves Ayodhya, when the Brahmanas, the Brahmanas' whole duty and their life is to perform sacrifices, they stop it. Just like in Krishna book, Prabhupada writes like that, to the hell with our sacrifices, to the hell with our so-called prestigious position of being a Brahmana. What is the use if we do not have attraction for the Supreme Personality of Godhead? The Brahmanas are feeling like that. What is the use of my life if there is no Ram? I'll just forget everything. They're stunned. They cannot do anything. They're so they can't even process that Ram is left. Just like we see when Akrura comes and takes Krishna away. The gopis become stunned like this. Akrura, your name is Akrura, one who is not cruel, but actually it's completely contrary. You come to take Krishna away from us. Similarly, the devotees of Lord Ram, they are, in past time, they're extremely frustrated at Kaikeyi. And even, I'm sorry, I was going to say something, but I might be getting that detail wrong, so I don't want to say it. But extremely, you could say just hurt. And you can see that here, so well written, this book is like so well written. That when Ram leaves, Maharaj Dasharatha kept his gaze fixed upon the dust raised by the chariot as it gradually disappeared over the horizon. Finally, after losing sight of Rama's departing chariot, the king fainted and fell to the ground. When Kaushalya and Kaikeyi ran to lift him up, Dasharatha forbade the younger queen, saying, "Don't touch me. I have disowned you. I no longer want to see you." And then here, Maharaj Dasharatha passed the night with great difficulty. He felt that losing Ram was like the dissolution of the universe. Seeing the king and Kaushalya in such a miserable state, Sumitra tried to pacify them. "Please do not lament for your son, for Sita and Lakshmana are with him. Rama will not experience the least difficulty. Indeed, Rama is not an ordinary human being, but the God of gods. Rama is not an ordinary human being, the illuminator of the sun and controller of the eternal time. While Rama resides in the forest, the earth herself and all natural phenomena will engage in his devotional service." And here, here we go. So this is the residents of Ayodhya. They start seeing him leave. That meanwhile, some of the citizens had followed Ram's chariot to the forest, begging him to turn back. Ram told them, "I cannot break my vow. I desire that you repose in Bharat, the same love you have for me." As they traveled, Ram saw how much some of the elderly Brahmanas were having difficulty keeping up with his chariot. Hearing their anxious plea, Rama felt great compassion and descended from the chariot. Then along with Sita and Lakshmana, he proceeded on foot, allowing the Brahmanas to catch up with him. Still, Rama would not turn his face backward, for he was determined to keep his vow perfectly. Thus, as the Brahmanas constantly beseeched Rama to turn back, they reached the banks of the river Tamasa. As the sun slipped over the horizon, Sumantra and Lakshmana selected a site to rest for the evening. Then after soothing ground, they made a bed of leaves for Rama. When he lay down with Sita, Rama quickly fell asleep nearby. Lakshmana stayed awake all night, discussing the glories of the elder brother with Sumantra. So early next morning they woke and they saw that their followers were not giving up They will not give up their determination to follow me, trying to bring me back to Ayodhya. They have completely forgotten their homes and families. They should not be burdened by Kaikeyi's curse as we are. Let us go before they awake. So when the citizens awoke, they looked in all different directions for their beloved Lord. Searching desperately here and there, they found the tracks of the chariot wheels. But after some distance, the tracks suddenly stopped. Unable to determine which way to go, the people gazed in the distance and wept. While Ram gone, the people reproached themselves, saying, "How can we return to Ayodhya with Ram? What will the women and children say when we bring to fail him back? What is the use of living here without the beautiful moon-like face of Rama? What is the use of a husband or children or even life itself? What good are household pleasures without the daughter of King Janaka and the lotus-eyed Ram?" With no alternative, the citizens returned to Ayodhya, feeling extremely depressed. When the household women saw that the men had returned without Rama, they reproached them with cruel, harsh words. Many sat down and wept. Due to shock, some of them were incapable of speaking or hearing. Everyone in Ayodhya began condemning Kaikeyi, swearing that they would never live under her rule. Thus, life in Ayodhya almost came to a standstill, appearing like a great ocean whose water had dried up. The Brahmanas neglected their duties, and mercantile people gave up conducting business. Householders no longer took the time to prepare meals, and the domestic animals let the grass drop out of their mouths, as though stunned. The cows would not give milk to their calves, and the mothers no longer felt happiness in greeting their sons. Even the stars in the sky assumed a stern aspect. Feeling tormented with grief, no one in Ayodhya could eat or engage themselves in entertainment. Indeed, everyone appeared to be almost lifeless, being absorbed in feelings of separation of Ram. So this is the devotion to Lord Ram. This is what it's giving. It's giving great, you could read it and say, well, that sounds a lot of suffering. But actually, although it's seemingly suffering, it's great bliss. There's a big series of lectures. I'm not too sure what. I think it might be up to 20. Radha Katha, somewhere in the 20s now, maybe. He begins this with how generally people want to get away from this suffering of this material world. The first Radha Katha begins like that. He starts discussing about Buddhist philosophy and all of this. Although people want to get away from this suffering, actually the highest bliss one can experience is this separation from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This suffering of not being in association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not having Him in our lives, it becomes dead, just like we're reading. Their lives practically stood still. And we can examine our own lives. When we did not have the devotional service of the Lord, the devotees of the Lord, and the Lord Himself in our lives, it was practically useless. We can realize that now at least, that there was no use to our lives, because we were not engaging in hearing about the Lord. We were engaging in hearing about so much nonsense. It was not purifying us. But when you hear about Ram and his beautiful pastimes of going and saving Sita, it captures the heart. It captures the hankering desire to have those feelings which are actually there in the pure soul, but it's exhibited in mundane ways. But when we listen to the pastimes of the Lord, all of these feelings can be invoked, and they can be purely exhibited for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the pastimes of the Lord Ram, this begins like this. It's very sad. But as my spiritual master says, and he struggles to recite, that the saddest of them all is this Agni Pariksha, where Sita, she has to enter into the fire. And he says, those who tell it, they are there. Anybody who speaks the pastimes of the Lord, of Lord Ram very beautifully, with proper understanding as it is, they are there. They are there in that pastime. Just like Akula Shekhar Alvar, or the king Alvar, right? He's one of the Alvars. he was so absorbed in the pastimes of the Lord, he said, let's go, prepare the horses, prepare the soldiers. We have to go and help Lord Ram defeat Ravana. Prepare them all, we shall go. And he was serious. It wasn't some thing he was making up. He was so absorbed in just hearing the pastimes of the Lord. He was feeling, okay, we have to go and help Lord Ram. I have to be in the army. I have to go and support. I have to do my little bit. He's a king, and he's naturally evoked that feeling. So they are there, those devotees, those who hear the pastimes of the Lord. They are transferred to that pastime directly. They see directly. So this, this pastime of the Lord, as Lord Ram goes and he conquers this Ravana, shoots his head, offers them in the 10 directions to the, because he's comes to relieve the demigods of the burden that is there. So he shoots his 10 heads in 10 directions. And then he's given so many benedictions by the demigods. Indra sends his chariot. And Sita is saved. She comes back. After he finishes and defeats this Ravana, and Sita comes in front of him, Lord Ram, he simply neglects her. He says, she comes and bows down to Lord Ram, and she says, you can go. That's all. What I've done, I've come to just save our line, our prestige. But because, he's come to honor our race, but because you've been with another man, I cannot accept you. So you go. And Ram, he's very dedicated, and Sita is very dedicated. She went, she's not fit to live in the forest. She took that austerity for her husband. And Ram, he took the vow of Ekapatni Vrata, that I'll only take one wife. He's full in himself. What kind of woman would she have to be to marry Ram? She is obviously she's the goddess of fortune herself. So he rejects her. So Sita, seeing this, of course she's very hurt. She says, I shall enter the fire. If that fire does not burn me, she shall prove her purity, that I have never touched another man. I've never had any other thought but your lotus feet, O Lord. She promises him that. I have not had any other thought than only of your lotus feet. And so she enters the fire. Agni comes, or actually he tells Lakshmana to build the fire, and Lakshman's fried out. Guru Maharaj says like that, Lakshman's fried out. He says, next time I'm not coming as a younger brother. Next time I'm coming as an older brother, because this Ram keeps making me do things that I don't want to do. Like, you have to put me in a position of building the fire to put Sita in. We just spend so much time going and saving her, and now you want me to put her into a fire. So Agni comes, and of course she's pure. She's pure, so she proves her chastity to Lord Ram, and Lord Ram accepts her. And then, again, as Vishnuchitra Prabhu was reciting this morning, and then there's criticism from that washerman. He criticizes that his wife spends time outside, and he tells her that I'm not like Lord Ram. I would never take back a woman who spends nights outside of my home. He says like that. And then that message gets to Lord Ram, and Lord Ram immediately tells her, okay, you have to go. And it's very sad. It's very, very sad. Of course, Ram is very, is performing, as Vishnuchitra Prabhu was nicely describing. And she's sent away. So the whole pastime, although there's ups and downs almost, but overall it is of sadness. And even at the end, when those two boys, I'm just forgetting the names of those two sons. Sorry? Lava and Kusha. They're reciting these pastimes, and he recognizes, oh, these boys must be the sons of Sita. And then there's a whole discussion about that, and again she proves herself, and then says, go and bring Sita, and they bring her. But then Mother Earth, she comes and takes her back. And Ram's fried out again. He's like, how can she take her? I will plunder the earth. And at that point, is it Brahma that tells him you can't do that? I think, I remember reading something like that. So the pastime of the Lord is very sad. It is very sad. The whole thing is very sad. But the devotees of the Lord, although it is sad, they feel great bliss in hearing, that they hear it again and again. And every time they hear it, what is going to happen? That feeling is there. What is going to happen? It's not like we read Ramayana second time and it's like, oh yeah, it's like, I know what's going to happen. That feeling is invoked within the heart. Oh, what is going to happen? Oh, Lakshmana is going to die. What is going to happen? Hanuman has to go and can't find the flower. So he just brings the whole mountain to save Lakshmana. And the devotee who is reading that is feeling, what is going to happen to Lakshmana? What is going to happen to Lakshmana? Even though he has read that. And that has been going on for hundreds and thousands and millions of years of these recitations of the pastimes of Lord Ram. And in this way, he enters into the hearts of the devotees through affection. This affection for Lord Ram is increased by reciting these amazing pastimes of the Lord, His glories. And when a devotee hears the darkness, as in referred here, it dissipates the darkness of ignorance by His effulgence, by His pastimes, by His name, by hearing His name. This is the supreme gift. We do not need a material donation. So as Prabhupada starts to describe all of the different devotees, Dhruva Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Vamana Dev, of course he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself. So the devotee no longer desires, because he's completely filled, overfilled. The love of Godhead is filling, it's over, how do you say that? It's overflowing from his heart. One who is absorbed in hearing, his heart is completely cleansed, his heart is completely pure, is overflowing with the love of Godhead. It melts, and it inundates, like in the Sankirtan Lord, in the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya. It inundates the whole society with love of Godhead, as the Panchatattva did. So this is the supreme gift, to be able to hear about Lord Ram. This is the supreme gift of our life. And if we can absorb in that, you won't desire anything material. We won't desire to have anything material. We do not give a fig about whatever, more money, a new job, a new car, a new home. We don't care for it. We desire to live simple lives. And that simple life is centered around hearing and engaging in the devotional service of the Lord. Engaging in hearing the pastime of Lord Ram. Engaging in invoking that feeling and that attraction towards Lord Ram. And so on this day we can try to read these pastimes and try to see through the eyes of these devotees that are feeling this. Try to see, oh wow, that is the platform we should be on. We should feel separation from Krishna. We should feel that separation. We should, as Mukunda Datta Prabhu was saying here also, he's saying, you're chanting the holy name, you should be crying. And if you're not crying, you should cry while you're not crying. And then he just kept going. He's like, if you're not crying that you're not crying, then you should cry that you're not crying to cry for the holy name. He just kept going, and it got confusing. I was like, okay. So we should, all of these devotees, they're crying for Lord Ram. And so we should cry for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for Krishna. We should be crying, means we should have that great desire to come in touch with Him. That means we shouldn't be moted out. We shouldn't be, lazy. We shouldn't be, we shouldn't be impatient. We should try to get rid of the material desires within our heart for the sake of serving Krishna. This one great realization I was having yesterday when I was just talking to some of the new devotees. It was just like so many of the devotees in these pastimes are being put through so much difficulty. And Kunti Maharani, actually, she prays for more difficulty. And I was thinking, okay, this is there. And, it's like we think about the Lord more. But then I was like, I'm sure that's there in Prabhupada's books. And it just occurred to me that actually amongst those difficulties is where pure devotional service starts to begin. For us, it's like that's where it begins. Because it's like you start to, when you can put aside those difficulties and focus on Krishna, then it becomes pure. It starts to become pure motive. Because now, you don't care. It's like, okay, my life, it's just really hard, and sometimes it's things are really tough. But you put aside all of those things, only considering the pleasure of the Lord, that's pure motive. And so amongst those difficulties, that attraction and that love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead starts to develop. So when we hear properly, it invokes that. It invokes us to act properly. Prabhupada says that is the secret of success in the 6th canto, just before the pastime of the Ajamil is being described. He says the secret of success is to always consider that all of the different difficulties, difficult situations in life is being given by Krishna. That is the secret of success, is to see like that. So when we hear properly, when we're receptive to the pure holy name, when we're receptive to the words of the spiritual master, we no longer become greedy for anything material, whether it's wealth, whether it's name, fame, adoration. All of these things are in our hearts so much. They're stopping us from having that attraction, like Vishnuchitta Prabhu was saying. We're chanting the holy name of the Lord, but we're more interested in socializing than chanting. Everybody was laughing because we know it's true. Even if we're left alone somewhere to chant our rounds, we get up and we find ways to waste our time in being diverted away from the holy name. But if we sincerely try and stop the desire for material enjoyment by having that higher taste, then we'll see that day in, day out, we'll be able to just chant. And we'll have taste, and that taste will be so great that we'll just be absorbed. We won't have time to go and socialize and all this. We'll just be absorbed in our chanting. And that absorption will increase more and more and more and more. So it requires great endeavor, of course. But it's like being said here, what have you not given us? What has the Supreme Personality of Godhead not given us? He's given us everything. He's given us our spiritual master. He's given us a place to practice devotional service. He's given us the association of the Vaishnavas. He's given us amazing prasadam, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur recites. He's given us tulasi to worship, to grant us devotional service. There's nothing that He has not given us. He has given us this supreme gift. So it would be foolish for us to ask for some material benediction. It would be foolish. Just like Dhruva Maharaj, that pastime is there for that reason. He goes and asks, he says he's asking for this kingdom, but at the end he says, well, it's just like broken glass. How foolish I was to ask for such a thing. So one is intelligent, then he can be first class intelligent. He can hear and learn instead of experience and learn. Then we can immediately, Prabhupada says, in one moment you can become fully Krishna conscious. One moment you can become fully Krishna conscious. It just requires the desire. It just requires enough desire to do it. And it's possible because we've already done it to some extent. We develop that desire to give up these 4 sinful, activities. We develop that desire to chant Hare Krishna. So there's no reason why we can't just push a little bit more and develop the desire for pure love of Godhead. It just requires us to stop being lazy. It just requires us to put in a little bit of effort, just hold the mind together, but it's hard because we have so many material things and we give that more importance. We give our own enjoyment more importance. So the pastimes of Lord Ram are very attractive, not in the way that is attractive in the material life of so-called enjoyment, in the way of there's so much sorrow and that is there, but that is also pure bliss. So we can come to that platform if we're able to, really have this determination, really pray to the Lord. Vishnu Prabhu was telling me yesterday, this, like as Prabhupada would say also, that you pray not to fall down. We pray to go on in devotion service. We pray to the Lord for more devotion. So we can continue our lives like this, like distributing books, chanting the holy names on the streets, performing the yajna, and we can associate with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We can start to feel the separation from the spiritual master, feel the separation from the Lord. And our lives becomes perfect. We don't desire anything else after that. You'll notice when you're fully engaged in devotional service, when you're fully there and you're actually doing it, you'll have those periods. I've had those periods in my life where you're just like, who cares for anything else? You're just like, wow, this is it. And then, whatever, all those desires rush back and you're like, oh, what happened? Sometimes you have great realizations sometimes, and you, in that moment, you're like Mahotsa Prabhu says, we've had those moments where like, I wish I could die right now. It's like this is the moment where I probably I'm just like there and like fully dedicated to my spiritual master, and it's completely there in my mind. It's like, oh my God, if I could go right now, that would be the best. Just like I was telling the guys, we were chanting and somebody got bit by a snake while we were chanting. By what is it? By what? Copperhead, and those are really poisonous. And if she died right there, it would have been good for her, man. It would have been, she would have gone back home, back to Godhead. But I can't say that in public. But the point being that when we're fully absorbed, we can see that experience. We can see that experience of feel that experience of, oh wow, this is what Krishna consciousness is. As Parameshwar Prabhu describes, you're flying. It's like you're on a cloud. You're really moving now. Huh? Flying? What? I don't know it. So we're really like moving. We really like feel like there's nothing that can stop us, but then our material desires it hit us like a train, and like, oh, what happened to that feeling? Where is that again? And then we have some experience. Then we want to get there again and push forward. So engaging in the service that Prabhupada has given us invokes all of these things. Just engaging in the distribution of Prabhupada's books and chanting the holy names on the streets. We can experience everything that the pastimes of Lord Ram is describing, what Krishna book is describing, what the Bhagavatam is describing. One can actually have a practical experience. It's not theoretical. One can actually get that experience. So I'll end the class there. If there's any questions or comments, please feel free to ask. Yes, Vishnu Chitta Prabhu.
One way in which Yoga Nashta also happens is that Supreme Lord Himself comes and reestablishes because devotees are not there.
Mm-hmm.
Happens. Also, one way in which Yoga Nashta can also be understood is at the end of when annihilation happens, creation happens. That's also because of time.
Mm-hmm.
So, and just small technical point.
Yeah.
But
while the living entities are on the planet, there's always available, right? That process of devotional service is always available.
Yeah, but sometimes there's one is even when annihilation happens, there's still living entities,
Mm-hmm.
as you can see in the Matsya avatar, and then Supreme Lord has to
Mm-hmm.
reestablish. Sometimes what happens is, like we see in the case of Hayagriva and all, and some demons steal the knowledge from Brahma, and Supreme Lord has to come and reestablish. But Prabhupada writes that whenever there's complete loss, and Supreme Lord Himself comes to reestablish the process of devotional service. So it seems that there are some instances where these things happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Generally it's maintained, but seems like it was there. Prabhupada makes that point actually in the Bhagavad Gita himself. It says this was lost. Now Krishna himself has made Arjuna as his disciple. It's in the same purport as that Yoga Nashta Parantapa, I think, where Prabhupada says now Krishna has made Arjuna as his disciple and is reestablishing something along those lines. I had to look it up. It's in that purport, if my knowledge serves me right. Oh, Mahotsav is called.
Mahotsav Prabhu is on the line.
Yeah.
Prabhu, this square offset feet is not there.
Oops. I thought you were calling for a class comment. All right, Hare Krishna.
He's just shooting.
I have a couple questions. So about that, some people, so the process of devotional service is always there. Anyways, I don't know if there's any references for that exactly, because what you're saying seems like it's sometimes there and sometimes gone. But some people they make that argument that that there's always a pure devotee on the planet. So
Prabhupada also says it somewhere like that. I'm not.
My understanding was if there's living
Somewhere, I think Prabhupada.
if there's living entities, that's what I was from what I've heard at least, could be wrong, but if there's living entities there, the Lord always gives them a chance to go back home, back to Godhead. That was my understanding.
yeah, because anyways, there can be some debate. Because even in the hellish planets, for instance, it's specifically there's no facility there, but that's because they don't want it. But anyways, it's a big topic. I don't want to get so much into it. But some devotees they argue on that point that what's it called so whatever, the pure devotional service is always there, so therefore pure devotee is always on the planet, so you have to hunt down that pure devotee. But anyways, that's a whole other point. So
I also think about Prabhupada says after the 10,000 years there will only be somebody was referencing that there will only be a few Vaishnavas that will carry that on in a hidden way.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I think about mostly when I think about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. It's interesting actually that Krishna says it was lost because Uddhava was still on the planet. He went to Badrika Ashram.
Well, Prabhupada writes in the purport that he says that as soon as the original purpose was scattered by the motives of unscrupulous commentators, there arose a need to re-establish the disciplic succession. So, 5,000 years ago, it was detected by the Lord himself that the disciplic succession was broken. Therefore, he declared that the purpose of the Gita appeared to be lost. So, but interestingly, Prabhupada says, in the same way, at the present moment, there's also so many editions of the Gita, especially in English, but almost all of them are not according to the authorized disciplic succession. Since there is a great need of an edition of the Gita in English, as it is received by the Parampara, disciplic succession, an attempt is made herewith to fulfill this great want. Prabhupada compares his writing of the Bhagavad Gita to Krishna re-establishing the disciplic succession.
Yeah. Also, I also think about Guru Maharaj says sometimes that the Bhaktivinoda Thakur brought the pure holy name back into the world.
Yeah.
So it's just that it continued in the line, but it's just prominent, brought it back prominently.
Yeah. How would we understand that then? That pure devotional service is lost and scattered, but then there's Uddhava and then the residents of Vrindavan. The residents of Vrindavan I can understand, but
scattered.
But Uddhava specifically got direct instruction from Krishna, like Arjuna.
Yeah, but I think it's scattered in the sense of it not being available to the general mass of the public.
Okay, I can
That's
see
what
that.
I'm guessing from Prabhupada. Even Prabhupada is saying, just like now there is so many unscrupulous commentators, but that's because if you wanted also to get a Bhagavad Gita as it is, you could not find it.
Yeah.
So it seems like that in that sense it's Yoga Nashta.
Yeah.
It's been scattered, Prabhupada says.
Yeah. Okay. Hare Krishna. I just had a couple questions. So one thing you're talking about just at one point with Ravana, that that Lord, I don't know exactly what you said, but Lord Ram like shot his 10 heads or something.
Yeah, it was,
What's the my understanding? I thought he got shot in the heart.
he was shot in the heart.
Yeah, that was my understanding.
I just know that his heads were scattered into the 10 directions.
Yeah.
That's what it's the Guru Maharaj meant.
After he killed him, he offered his heads.
Okay, it's not that she shot. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, just some detailed thing.
Yeah.
But I didn't know
Sorry,
if like
that's
there was like a
important.
different thing there. So one question I have is just, it's kind of like a general question, and I feel like it's important. So just as like, I think it was talked a little bit about this morning, but so, as like Gaudiya Vaishnavas generally, like, we like emphasize like, like Radha Krishna and Krishna and all of that. So I'm just wondering, like, if you can explain, like, what are like benefits for us to like hear Ram Leela and discuss Ram Leela? Because some people may argue that like you don't need to hear about Ram and like that, you just focus on like Radha Krishna and Krishna book, and like you kind of like in that sense de-emphasizing that.
He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's like to say that it's any lesser. It's like if Vishnujita Prabhu was saying it's offensive. It's like, it's like misunderstanding, misapplication. Prakriti Sahaja thing is like you want to, it's like how can Ram's pastimes be any lower than, Krishna is coming as Lord Ram is non-different. It's like that attraction is there in the particular devotee. There's no problem with that. It's like, it's a materialistic mentality. It's like, Prabhupada says like that, in the spiritual world there's transcendental differences, but not like the ones you have here. So it's like one cannot see on that level. One has to be careful understanding. Just like we have attraction to hearing Matsya Avatar, we have attraction to hearing Hayagriva, we have attraction to hearing all of these pastimes of the Lord. Specifically Ram, Nrsimha and Krishna are emphasized also. Those three being very, the Bhakta Vatsalya mood is very prominent in those three. So natural attraction is there, and people who say otherwise then they have a materialistic understanding of the philosophy, that you don't need to hear about Lord Ram. What's the problem, right? It attracts one to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When we read this, it's attractive, it invokes emotion. Like I told Vishnujita Prabhu, it's like, this is like, I felt even more, like when I read the book, it invoked definitely more, even than when the first time I read the Krishna book. It doesn't mean that Krishna book is any less than that. It's just like it is attractive to individuals that read that, and we're not comparing it like, okay, Krishna, that means like Krishna is lower or Ram is higher, or it just means like, hey, look, like this is like attractive to that particular individual devotee, and it's like perfect. It's absolutely perfect. So people who say otherwise, it's a materialistic understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and it's like, whatever, slight, and like that. I don't know, that's my that's what I've understood from reading Prabhupada's books and hearing from my spiritual masters. So, is that okay? Or you want to add anything?
I just had one small thing, and then
Yeah.
I have somebody else. But I was listening to Guru Maharaj give class yesterday. He was making a nice point, actually I never thought of, but he was saying that, anyways, he's making the point that Ram and Krishna are non-different. So he's saying Ram Bhakti is Krishna Bhakti, because Ram is so it's like to say like, you can't have devotion for Ram. It's like they're the same person. So it's a misconception. But that's like another angle.
Yeah.
I thought that was nice.
It's a separatist idea.
Yeah.
In the Bhagavatam, it's like the third class neophyte. It has a separatist idea. It's like that. Anything else? Any questions? Janu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So you were talking about how this separation and this sadness that everyone's experiencing in Ram Leela, it's actually just non-different from like the highest level of bliss.
It is the highest level, yeah.
But we see that Maharaj Dasarat, for example, he passes away because of how sad and morose he is. How can we understand that?
Yeah, even in the, Krishna Leela is a little, that it's mentioned that even the gopis, sometimes they're so, some of them couldn't go to the forest. So in that state of like separation, one of them couldn't go. In that state of separation, the heart, her is basically just like she died. So Dasharath, it's mentioned that Dasharath Maharaj just joined. He left. He performed the pastime of living in that world, but then he just joined into the transcendental abode. He continued that. I mean, he's a transcendental personality, so that feeling and that devotion, it continues. It's not that like for him, he's a transcendental personality. There's no question of stopping it. So yeah, even leaving one's body in separation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is like amazing. And we want that. We want that. That's what we want. We want to feel that. We want to be at that stage. So it's an example. It's like an amazing example of how one should leave one's body. He's showing us that one should feel so much like that. Yeah, is that okay? You have anything to add to that? Or?
There's rasa there also.
Yeah.
I mean, generally you will find that devotees, even in great distress, they don't give up their body. In fact, that's one of the lamentation that, great devotees in feeling of separation, they experience. They say, how am I still living? How is this possible? Acarya has explained the highest levels of ecstasy. The body is actually unable to handle it, but by Krishna's mercy, the devotee does not give up his body. And you see that in Chaitanya Leela especially. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his highest ecstasies, his body is all getting disfigured, this, that. It's really, really, really heavy to read. Heavy and quite inconceivable. But, and there, you see, he didn't give up his body. I mean, he didn't, disappear. So generally it's not the case. But rare case, like as we see in Dasharath, and we see that gopi there, Krishna also teaches that the separation is so great that it is, they leave their body. That's how strong the feelings are. It's not some show. The Ayodhya Vasis, they all practically they're lifeless. They should have actually all died, but they didn't. It's like how they're living. They're not eating. The cows are not eating. How are they living? They're living by mercy of Lord Rama. I mean, so there's, Supreme Lord exhibits these, and that rasa, there's that rasa. I mean, it's, when you think of Lord Rama, even after he's coronated, and then during the coronation ceremony, I think there's a description, I'm not 100% sure, but I think in the bigger Ramayana there's a description how Dasharatha is very pleased, observing that from above. So there's a feeling there. So
could you say also those residents, like there's some glimmer of hope that Ram will come back, and therefore that is that hope keeps them.
Yeah.
In life.
Yeah, there's that hope also.
Yeah. We see also Nartanda.
But for somebody who's feeling yugaitam nimeshena, for Rama to be exiled for 14 years, it's a very long period of time. It feels like it'll never end,
One moment.
Really, they are in that mood. They are in that, yugaitam nimesh, every minute, every moment.
Feels like 12 years or more.
It's very inconceivable because you see, it's like these residents, these devotees of Lord Rama, Vigraha, Ramo Vigraha and Dharmaha, that he is the very personification of Dharma. And you see these Ayodhya Vasis, they come back, and then their wife speaks very cruel words to them. You're not supposed to do that. The wife is not supposed to do that.
The Brahmanas, there's some of the mentioned, or elderly, some of the older Brahmanas were like following Lord Ram too, so they... Yeah,
and they stop performing their sacrifice, and they stop performing their worship and all this. You're not supposed to do that, but and especially devotees of Lord Ram, it's like... But you see that, and this is what the Ramayana, brings you to, that amazing... So Supreme Lord exhibits these different things. But yeah, in that pain there is bliss. I mean, it's painful, but it's also, it stands out. Dasharatha, among all the separation of all the residents of Ayodhya, Dasharatha's separation stands out. There's no doubt about it. He suffered the most. And he felt, and he felt himself to be responsible also. I mean, it's very, very heavy,
Anything else? Okay. Mataji's? No? Okay. All right. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Shri Ramachandra Bhagavan ki jai.